Hello everybody, welcome. My name is Ogsky, you can call me Andrew, and today we will be ranking Tech Wiz cards from my game Deck Dads. I'll get right into it today because I have a lot of cards to rank today. The Tech Wiz has more cards than any other dad in Deck Dads, but before we start, I just want to give a quick shout out to my most recent video where I redesigned some character boards. I'm really getting Deck Dads to look like a finished product and not some middle school project. So check out that video. I actually redesigned the Tech Wiz character board, and that is part of what made me want to do this. Also, I got a nice suggestion on my last Tierlist video asking to see this dad, so you know the drill by now. Let's start with the basic starting cards. So just like every other dad, I will put the block right above the basic damaging card. Every dad has these exact two cards in their deck. They're just reflavored for each dad, so really nothing special. I'm just putting the block slightly above the damage because you're always more happy to draw a block card than your basic damage, especially if you have damage coming at you. If you haven't seen Deck Dads, check around the channel, check the link in the description. It is free on Tabletop Simulator if you'd like to play this combination deck builder brawler made by yours truly. So, the Tech Wiz being one of those dads, the Tech Wiz is all about building gear. So gear gives like passive benefits. I have those all here, which will kind of be like a secondary order to this tier list. We'll place those all in the end. But next we have Download. This is a very versatile card from the starting deck. It kind of lets you get those cards you need to get your kit going. Because the Tech Wiz is all about building or getting scrap and then turning scrap into gear. So you have kind of this cycle of gaining and spending resources. So any card that lets you get your engine going, like Download here, is very good. Is very good. Especially, you can only spend 0 on Download and just draw another card. So it's like you didn't even draw it if you don't want to spend any energy on it. And here is an actually great card. Well, actually great might be a little pushing it for fanny pack. So the Tech Wiz's whole thing is gaining scrap and using scrap as a resource. A card that just gives you scrap for free in your starting deck is usable. You'd play this card every time you see it. There's not really a time when you'd ever not play this card unless you have maximum scrap already. But there are better ways to get scrap. That being said, usually strapped for scrap. You're always very happy to have it. But hey, we can go further up here. The same tier, I'm going to be putting the selfie stick. The selfie stick is if you just look at it in terms of damage, it's pretty bad. Damaging 4 for 2 energy when you have a 1 energy for 3 damage card in your basic starting deck is a bad deal. But, like I just said, scrap is in high demand, so oftentimes you're playing this card mostly just for the scrap. You don't even really care about the damage. Obviously, you do need to damage in order to get the scrap. So, it isn't... You can't just play this card without anybody around you. You do need to kind of put yourself into the throw of things. And for the last card in the starting deck, we have the Tool Shed. This is the card that kind of completes your kit from your starting deck. It lets you get online, start getting some gear after you've been able to build up your scrap. It's definitely the worst way of getting gear. There are other cards that let you get gear that you can buy from your color deck. This one is a little disappointing. But not enough to put it in the disappointing tier. Because obviously it is the gateway to some truly amazing cards. And what makes the Tech Wiz unique is the gear. This is the only card in your starting that lets you get there. It's just definitely the worst way to do that. So, next up, we have one of the absolute best ways of getting there, the 3D printer. The 3D printer does it all. It lets you scrap and get gear in the same card. So, obviously, from this card right here, you can see that this is a major upgrade over the tool shed. This card was nerfed recently. It used to still 1 energy, gain 1 scrap, and then it was if you have 2 or more scrap, you may spend 2 scrap to gain the top tier. This just made this, like, light years ahead of the tool shed, but it's still amazing. Seriously fun. This one card will let you do some crazy combinations with your gears, so that is definitely way up there. Next we have the binoculars, and this is an interesting card in the sense that it is very oppressive on the other players. This really lets you exert your will over everybody else and show them a really bad time by taking away their hard-earned cards. Obviously, if you're able to draw this card like every turn, your opponents are going to be running out of cards fast. They're not going to be able to be cycling their good cards. They're going to have to, like, not play any good cards the more you're able to play binoculars. The only problem is that they still have some control, because obviously it's the first card they're able to play on their turn. So there's another card that kind of does a similar thing as the binoculars you'll see later. This one is definitely very, very good. It does cost 2, which is obviously using most of your turn to do something that might not have an effect, and actually in some cases might help other players if they're able to vanish some of their poorer cards. But a very, very oppressive card if you're able to get it off a couple of times. Blueberry. This card is one of the very few cards that lets you look at the top of other decks. Now, this is usually not something that is ever really important, so this card also just lets you move or draw. So it's kind of like a free look at the top of a deck. You can use this before choosing to spend your money to see if there's a card on top of the deck that you really want. And obviously just for free. The only downside is that, like, that's really not that much of a benefit, and this takes up a card in your hand. So it's not, like, incredible. It's conditionally good. The free movement or drawing is fine. It's just kind of there, I think. BB gun. This card is definitely just a strict upgrade to the basic attack, letting you damage at an angle. It doesn't have to be aligned to the grid. You can shoot somebody around corners, which is great, and also the damage is bumped up a little bit from the basic starting card, but this doesn't really fit in with... It doesn't really advance your gameplay. Like the play style of the Tech Wiz is not super aggressive. This is kind of like a little patch on your damage if you need just an extra little something. So I'm putting this in conditionally good. It's not blowing anybody's minds. Unlike the Breaker Box, this card does do damage, but also while playing into the gameplay loop of the Tech Wiz. This card, and it's not the only one like this, but it rewards you for keeping your scrap around. So the more scrap you're able to rustle up, the bigger damage Breaker Box is going to do. And like I said in the Yard Bard video, any card that doubles something is... You should be paying attention to that card, because now the Tech Wiz has a max scrap of 7. So if you are able to muster up to 7 scrap, you can be dealing 14 damage for 1 energy, and that is, like, leagues better than your basic attack. This card is among the best. I'm putting that one up in seriously fun. And next we have the Chain Wallet. So, the Chain Wallet is another card that lets you gain scrap and also spend scrap to gain gear, all in one card. It's kind of like a like a hotfix situation. Don't be fooled by that 0 cost, though. This card does kind of require you to spend energy, just, like, not all at once, because obviously you need money. This card is just allowed to spend money in ways you're normally not able to. So this could let you kind of spread out growing money over a couple turns and then turning that into gear, but you're making the sacrifice of spending your time to do that, instead of spending your money on removing cards, buying more cards. So, this one's fine. You're happy to see it. Now, Degree. This is not the strongest card in the game, but if you're a little devil like me, it is one of the most fun cards in the game. This card just lets you steal money from other players, which, if you are a jerk, and I'm not afraid to call myself a jerk, this card... Oh, it's evil. It is EVIL. Because obviously, this is a good deal, spending 1 energy to get 2 energy worth of money that somebody else spent their time hoping to use themselves. So, 1, it's a good deal. 2, it is the perfect card for somebody who likes to ruin other people's days. Okay, Drone Drop. Okay, this card, I know I've been talking about how scrap is a valuable resource and how the Tech Wiz isn't all about dealing damage, but this card right here kind of flips that on its head. What is very, very nice about this card is that it kind of it's one of the few cards in the game that lets you just damage anybody, whoever, wherever they are, and sometimes there's a nice upside of getting some scrap. So you can be hiding way across the board and be dropping cardboard boxes on people from orbit. And that is always a very good time and a very good card. 4! Okay, this is maybe the most iconic Tech Wiz card. 4 is another outlet for you to spend scrap on, besides getting gear. 4 is obviously some big damage. In my last video, check it out, the Grill Master, I go over the his card, the Hockey Puck, which is 2 energy for 6 damage. This card is, if you're paying attention, 1 energy for 6 damage. So this card is kind of twice as good as that card, and I rank that card, it's a pretty good card. Obviously, there's the downside of spending scrap, but this card also has a ridiculous range. It lets you hit somebody from across the entire board. This card is crazy. Actually great. Now, this card right here, the GPS, is, I have to say, I'll say it, this is my favorite card out of all of the Tech Wiz, and one of the most powerful cards in the game. It has a very basic effect, 1 energy in order to look through your deck and take a card you want. On a dad like the Tech Wiz, who is so dependent on things falling into place, having the right amount of scrap at the right time in order to get your gear going, the GPS is just like an angel sent from heaven that lets you find the card you so desperately need. Always happy to have the GPS. Even though it costs an energy, it's still so worth it every single time. It's kind of basic in its effect, but it does allow you to get into some serious nonsense. Alright, next up we have the Math Book. This card is a lot like Binoculars, and actually I'm going to rank it the same as Binoculars. It serves a very similar purpose of just atrophying your opponents over time, turning them into people who aren't able to play their cards. But unlike Binoculars, this card gives you the agency. It gives you the agency to look through another player's deck and get rid of the cards you want. Instead of letting them, maybe they'll play their basic attacks just to vanish them. No, you can be taking their S tier cards, throwing them in the garbage, and it doesn't let you affect as many players, but it does obviously put that into your own hands. So this card is crazy. Model Train. Alrighty, another card that lets you gain gear, but this one lets you do it without, doesn't matter how much scrap you have. Obviously, the trade-off for the train is that it takes your entire turn. It takes 3 energy. You only have 3 energy on your turn. But, I mean, the reason you're playing the Tech Wiz is to eventually get to play with all the fun gear cards. So, Anything that just lets you get gear, I hope I'm not crowding up the S tier too much. This card is very, very good. Okay. Now, maybe we'll be balancing out the S tier a little bit with the off-on again. Damage 3 to yourself, then scrap 3 or gain the top gear. So, unlike some other cards that damage yourself, you're able to block this damage. If you're able to, for your last energy, get a block. Yeah, I mean, it's nothing special, right? It does let you gain gear without getting any scrap, just like the model train, for a slightly discounted price, but at the risk of damaging yourself. You only have 10 health, so you're never going to play this when you have a block, or sorry, when you don't have a block, unless you're crazy like me. This one belongs in disappointing, unfortunately. And it might have some company in its misery with outage. So, if you're reading outage, you might say, oh, this is a crazy card. Choose X+1 other players. They have 1 less energy on their next turn. So the problem with this is that you can never take away more than 1 energy from any other player. It tends to have less of an effect than you'd like. Trust me, I've seen this card a million times in game, always hoping that it would blow me away. But for the price, normally you only have 3 cards in your hand. Playing this card just to kind of hamper somebody else, just so they can kind of only have 2 cards in their hand. It seems like it would be very good, but the results have shown otherwise. Okay, so the Play Cube is up next. This card lets you take control of any player on the board, move them around a bit, and then deal a bunch of damage. When I do the Private Pops video, you'll see this card is kind of like Machete, where it lets you move and damage in the same card. But the difference being Play Cube, you can like kind of mind control if you're playing with more than one other opponent. You can mind control one of them to move around and damage the other one. This card is a lot of fun. The damage is nice. Another one of these cards lets you damage from anywhere on the board. This card is a good card, and you should consider using it when you play the Tech Wiz. Pocket Sand. Alrighty, so, remember what I said about doubling? This card has a tripling in it. Block equal to 3 times the amount of scrap you have. You usually have around like 4 or something scrap at any given time. Less if you just bought some gear. But it's not an unreasonable ask to have like 4 scrap. So, doing the math, 2 energy for 12 block if you have 4 scrap is ludicrous. This card is actually crazy, especially when comparing it to like the normal block. It makes the normal block look microscopic in comparison. Easily another S tier card. Okay, so here we have the Reel. The Reel is kind of, how should I say this? It's a little bad, except when it's putting in the work. Some of you. So hang on, let me speak like a normal person. You have pretty good range on your cards as the Tech Wiz. Range is not the problem, but that being said, a lot of your cards do support you hiding far, far away. And if you need some of that extra range because you don't draw the right cards, this card can help support you from camping way across the map. But this card is very, very situational. So I think the bottom tier is where it belongs. Not just to balance things out. I'm not just worrying about the shape of my tier list. I think that's just where it needs to go. And okay, Short Circuit. This is basically just a get out of jail free card. This is the highest block out of any card in the entire game. Even higher than any blocking dad like the Mr. Outside, who's very defensive, does not have a card that gets nearly this high. This is more than double the most block that Mr. Outside has, and it's free. The downside, it is a one-use card, and you better hope you draw it when you need it. This card suffers a bit from, if you've heard of too good to use syndrome. You might not use this card when you should, just because it's so good that you think you might need to save it, and then hopefully you draw it when you do really need it. So, I mean, it's very good. This is a very good card. Easy S tier. And a little contrast, we have the Talking Fish. X, if you don't know, just lets you choose how much energy you want to spend, 0, 1, 2, or 3, depending on how much energy you have left. So, if you choose 0, you're doing nothing with this card. This is one of the few X cards that does nothing if you spend 0. So, you're spending at least 1. This card is all about gaining... You're mostly doing this for gaining the scrap, let's be honest. You're not playing this card for the damage unless you're desperate. So, that being said, it is a good engine for gaining scrap. Especially if you need an infusion of scrap, you can choose how hard you want to go on that. So, you know what? Better Than Others is it feels too generous. I'm putting this one in conditionally good. And lastly, for the normal playing cards, after this it'll be all the passive bonuses with the gear cards. But to end things off, we have the Cloud. This card lets you move around obstacles. So part of being the Tech Wiz is stalling at the start of the game in order to gain your gear, and then you can go into battle with what you got there. The Cloud can kind of let you juke out people, phasing through walls. It isn't central to your gameplay loop as the Tech Wiz, but it is fun. It does let you get into some weird scenarios that you normally can't end up in. But it is. I'm putting it in conditional. Just because I think that's where it belongs. Okay, so moving on to the gear. So like I said, these gear cards aren't like normal cards. You don't play them. They just sit on your character board. You can have up to 2 at a time, and they just give you a static passive bonus. So, starting with 58008. Let me know if you get it. I'm sure you do. You're very smart people. Removing a card from your deck now costs $2. That is quite the discount, my friends. Normally it's $6. This brings it way down to 2. This is like a 3 times as good as normal buying. It's pretty damn great. Especially if you have something like binoculars that you really benefit from having quite a small deck, a card that you want to keep drawing over and over again. You can just go crazy every 2 turns, removing 3 cards from your deck. I mean, this is one of the best ways to remove cards in the game. So, actually great. Next up, we have the gear. When you buy a card, choose from the top 6 cards. Normally, you choose from 3, so this is kind of like a 2 times benefit. This one falls a little short, so... Oh, I should say, I'll be ranking the gear independently from the normal cards, so this one isn't going up against any of the other cards, just the other gear. This one is among the worst of the gear. You're never very happy to see this because it doesn't have any immediate benefits that you spent all this time building up to get the gear. You're hoping that you're getting something that's gonna let you to hit the ground running and start taking over the game. The gear just kind of lets you set up better even more, which is not always what you're after. Firewall. You may vanish 1 card in your hand at the end of your turn. So, in play, this card ends up being a lot like the Calculator, but it gives you a bit less control, right? Because if you're removing cards from your deck, you can remove any cards you want. With Firewall, you have to hope you draw the card, and then it lets you get rid of it. So there's a bit less of autonomy involved, but you're not spending any money to do it. I think that all kind of works out to bring it down a tier, or to... I want to put it in C tier, because it doesn't feel right putting this in B tier. There are a lot better cards. Like the Apron. Apron, block 2 at the start of your turn. Very simple, straight to the point. This card just kind of lets you fend off little bits of damage here and there. On turns that nobody's damaging you, this card does nothing. It does kind of help you just kind of stop people from pinging you with 1 and 2 damage, because like, oh, it's just going to be blocked anyway. Lets you not have to worry about that. The block isn't great, because most cards do 3 or more damage, so you'll end up having to block anyway. But it is a nice safety net, and like I said, it does stop little pesky dads from trying to nip at you, so easy B tier. Now, for definitely our first S tier among the gear cards, we have the number 1 dad, your Smug Mug. Gain $2 at the start of your turn. This is kind of like saying, have 2 extra energy on your turn, going from 3 energy to 5 energy, but you have to spend 2 of those energy on money. So, you can obviously see this card combined with the calculator lets you just remove a card from your deck every turn, which is crazy to think about. This card, it's. I hope I don't have to explain myself too much. This is an S tier card. Having that kind of like engine, and unlike the firewall and the gear, which are also engines, rank those a bit lower. This one has an immediate punch to it. So, for that reason, definitely an S tier. Another high tier 1 hoverboard. You may move it to 2 at the start of your turn. A lot like Smug Mug, this is basically saying, hey, you have 2 extra energy at the start of your turn, but you have to use them to move. So, if you're moving anyway, you're moving most turns. This one is just a huge discount, and this is among the most that you're happy to see. So, it doesn't quite achieve the height of Smug Mug, but it's close. This is like an A+ card. Alrighty, so next up, we have the joystick. You may add a colorless card to your deck at the end of your turn. So, the joystick is a very interesting card because the colorless cards tend to be pretty good, and they function in any deck, including the Tech Wiz, but the joystick doesn't give you any control over what you get. It just lets you take the top one. You don't get to see what it is before you get it, so unless you have the blueberry, of course. rare consistent use for that card. I mean, the joystick's just fun because it lets you get little loot box surprises every turn. But is it any good? It's alright. It'll dilute your deck out a lot from maybe the other cards you want, but you can choose not to use it, so it's not like oppressive in that regard. So, you know what? Just for the fun factor, we're putting that in A tier. Okay, so next up we have Nailed It, which is a card that lets you just deal passive damage whenever you end your turn, just for moving around and standing next to people. You get to shoot them with a nail gun. Damaging 2 is pretty good. That may make your opponents not even bother blocking it, so over time you can just kind of keep nailing them in the forehead. And, of course, this card lets you damage 2 to more than 1 player. So if you're able to get a twofer, you're always very happy with the nail gun. So this card is pretty good. The only downside, of course, is that they can run away if they're really far away and you're not using Nailed It. So we're putting that one in B tier. Okay, more RAM. What is up with this card? The range of all your cards you play are increased by 2. Yeah, it's pretty good, huh? It lets you hit from further away. You like staying at range as the Tech Wiz. You don't have a ton of defensive options, so being able to kite your opponents is always a great thing. But I don't have much more to say other than it's pretty good. It's definitely better than the ones in C and D tier, so that's where I'm going to put it. Okay, we have the toolbox. Toolbox lets you draw more. Drawing is the lifeblood of deck dads other than energy. The more cards, the more options, the better you're going to be doing, the more options you have. And this just lets you this is what, a 133% increase in the amount of cards. That's not math. Nope, don't do math on a YouTube video. The internet will get you for it. It's you go from 3 cards to 4 cards every turn, which is a huge upgrade. And, I mean, getting a card is part of the reason of what makes GPS so amazingly good. So just an extra chance to draw more cards. Hey, can't go wrong with it. Actually great. Okay, next up we have the pick for my favorite of the gear. What I think is just the best gear all around, the Power Strip. The energy cost of the first card you play each turn is reduced by 1. So this is one step short of giving you a free energy every turn. Everybody else is constrained to the 3 energy per turn. You get to ascend to godhood and have 4. Obviously, that's not exactly what it says, because if you're just spending your turn moving or gaining energy, gaining money with your energy, Power Strip isn't doing anything. But most turns you're spending energy playing cards. It's a bit wasted if you're playing like a 0 cost card as the first card of your turn, but just don't do that. play a card that costs something in order to get the discount. Power Strip is ridiculous for all of the reasons that I talked about for the hoverboard and the smug mug, except it lets you spend that energy how you want to use it. Okay, Utility Belt. This card lets you retain 2 cards at the end of your turn, and that is decent. Retaining cards you don't play on your turn and saving them for next turn is a great way to set up a combo. The Tech Wiz doesn't have any crazy combo, like 1-2 punches it can perform with the cards available to it, but obviously if you're getting some colorless cards, you can be doing some crazy stuff, and just anyway, if you have too many good cards in your hand, it's nice to save some to guarantee you have them next turn. But that's not always super duper great. So I'm just looking at the cards in B tier, and this card is definitely not. It's like a C+. It is better than. I'm not ranking the cards within these groups, but if I were, the Utility Belt is better than Firewall for sure. Next we have What. What basically lets you mulligan once per turn. So on your turn you draw your cards, you don't like what you see, I didn't hear it. You can put them back, draw another 3, hopefully get something better. So it hurts if you draw like 1 good card and 2 bad cards, then you might not be using What to its full potential. But that being said, What is pretty good. It gets you out of some tricky situations, especially if you're being attacked and damage is lingering on you and you desperately need a block and you just didn't draw anything. What gives you a second chance at life? That being said, it's a B tier card, I'll be honest with you. Okay, enough jokes. Blowtorch. You may damage 3, range 2 at the start of your turn. This card is a lot like the nail gun, and for that reason, I'm putting it in the B tier where it belongs. Blowtorch does more damage at a higher range than the nail gun, but it has, to go along with those 2 upsides, it has 2 downsides. 1, it only lets you target 1 other player instead of more than 1, and it happens at the start of your turn and not the end of your turn. So when you have a gear, you advertise it on your board, everybody can see it, everybody will know you have the Blowtorch, and if they all run away from you before the start of your turn, you don't get to use it. So you can weaponize that. You can get people to move how you like if you're very, very careful. But you're not often getting the actual damage out of this card. So yeah, it's a B tier card. And lastly, the last card of today's video, we have the Welding Mask. Now, the Welding Mask is kind of a stopgap from just getting completely wrecked on a turn. It's among all of these passive cards, it is a very passive card, because it's not doing anything until it does. But when it does, you are very happy that this card just reduces like a 30 damage Rapture from Father all the way down to 5 damage, and you are alive at the end of the day. Kind of a lot like Short Circuit. It just doesn't reduce all that damage to 0. You're still taking damage, but it's a reasonable amount of damage. Unless, of course, you're getting cut to death with 1,000 paper cuts. This card isn't going to be able to stop that. Most damage in deck dads is from that like 3 to 5 range. It's not often you're getting hit with like a 20 damage wallop. But, I mean, when you do, you're going to be happy to have this B tier, A tier card. Alright, that is it for today. Thank you for watching. This has been the Tech Wiz card ranking video. Let me know if you agree, disagree with any of my decisions. Real quick, if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Check out Deck Dads on Tabletop Simulator, and if you're looking to participate in the community, check out my Discord server. Everything is linked in the description. And thank you so much for watching.